She left her childhood behind to raise her siblings. She worked, cooked, and gave love, while her mother lost herself in alcohol and her father disappeared for weeks at a time. Years later, her siblings grew up, became wealthy, and forgot everything, until, in old age, she was discarded as a burden. Have you ever seen a story where the one you love most is the first to be forgotten? So you stay until the end, because karma doesn't forgive. Aline had only 9 years when she learned to prepare a bottle, change a diaper, and ward off hunger cries with affection. She was the oldest of 3 sisters, and ever since their father disappeared one night, without letters, without goodbyes, and their mother sank into drinking, she became everything her siblings needed: mother, protector, provider, and shield against the world. While other children played in the street, Aline collected clothes from the clothesline, heated up reheated rice, and told made-up stories to help her siblings fall asleep faster. She knew by heart the song that soothed Daniel, the middle child, and the right way to carry Bia, the youngest, without making her cry. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Because if she collapsed, who would take care of them? Her mother, Vera, was a shadow of her former self. She spent her days hungover and her nights in bars on the outskirts. Sometimes she'd disappear for 2 days, returning reeking of cigarettes and bruised. She never explained or apologized. She'd throw her bills on the table and drawl, "Go ahead, Aline, you're the oldest." And Aline did. At 12, she cleaned her neighbor's house for coins and stale bread. At 13, she sold truffles outside her school. By 14, she had already dropped out of school to work in a bakery. She came home exhausted, yet she cared for her siblings with a love no one understood. A love that wasn't planted in her. A love she herself decided to cultivate. The brothers' teachers always praised, "Aline, your brothers are so polite, they seem like the children of someone special." She smiled, without correcting. It was easier that way. Time passed and the siblings grew up. Daniel was the most rebellious, but he obeyed Aline as if she were their mother. Bia was sweet, cried easily, and clung to her sister whenever their mother yelled or threw something at the wall in a fit of rage. In the neighborhood, they said that Aline was the soul of the house. But no one saw the nights when she cried alone, hidden in the bathroom, huddled, among dirty towels asking God when it would end. No one heard when she whispered, "I just wanted to be a kid too." One day, the social worker knocked on the door. Someone had reported abandonment, but Vera, smart, quickly cleaned the house, made coffee, put on makeup and said, "Everything is normal here. I'm just a single mother. Aline helps me, like any daughter." Aline remained silent, because if she told the truth, her brothers would be taken away, and she couldn't bear to lose them. She'd rather remain a prisoner of that sacrificial childhood than see Daniel and Bia separated from her. The social worker left, and the routine returned to its usual grayness. The following years were marked by silent struggles. Aline was the one everyone saw as strong, but only because no one took the time to look closely. She had to reject birthday invitations, school crushes, and end-of-year parties. With each, "I can't," she buried deeper what little youth she had left. By the time she turned 18, Aline already looked like a 30-year-old. Her hair was tied back in a tight bun, layers of dark circles under her eyes, and her gaze was a mixture of pain, exhaustion, and a rare kind of love that only those who raise without giving birth understand. On her birthday, no one made a cake. Vera didn't even remember. It was Daniel, then 13 years old, who scribbled "Congratulations" on a sheet of notebook paper and handed it over along with a piece of candy he had received at school. Aline cried. She hugged her brother and said, "I would do it all over again for you. Always." And she would. Because Aline believed, with all her remaining strength, that one day that love would return. But she didn't know that time doesn't always give back in kind, and sometimes the ones you protect the most are the ones who forget you first. Adolescence arrived for Aline like an extra weight on her already tired shoulders. While her classmates talked about crushes, trendy clothes, and ore-cut videos, She was, washing clothes in the sink, waiting in line at the supermarket with a neighbor's credit card, or trying to calm her mother during another night of uncontrolled drinking. At 15, Aline had no closet, just a makeshift shelf with 2 sets of clothes. Her vanity was a cardboard box containing a cracked mirror and a single worn lipstick, a gift from a kind neighbor. There was no room for vanity, nor for dreams. What there was an overdue electricity bill, Daniel's report card covered in complaints, and Bea was still too young to understand why her mother slept for 3 days straight and woke up cursing everyone. Aline now worked at a small neighborhood bakery, Monday through Saturday. She worked as a cashier, cleaner, and sometimes even helped with the oven. She earned little, but every penny was spent with precision. Bread, rice, milk, soap. There was nothing left for luxuries or emergencies. Even so, Aline refused to leave her brothers without a minimum of dignity. She bought used school supplies at thrift stores, sewed up torn uniforms, and, on birthdays, always found a way to make a simple cake. One day she took leftover cake from the bakery and created a layer cake with just frosting, filling, and creativity. Daniel thought it was amazing. Bea took a picture with her neighbor's cell phone. The mother? It didn't even appear on the table. Vera now lived locked in her own world of bottles and bitterness. He left the house only to drink or fight. He yelled at his children as if they were enemies and sometimes said barbaric things like, "You should thank me for being born. If regret killed." Aline felt hatred, not for her mother, but for the injustice. How could someone who carried so much love in her heart be treated like a servant in her own home? How could the neighbors think everything was normal just because she smiled in the street? It was there, in that swallowed silence, that Aline grew up. Not with debutante parties, but with calluses on the hands and cracks in the soul. She had to drop out of school altogether. She tried to juggle it, but her morning shift clashed with her bakery shift. At night, all she could do was take care of the house and help Daniel, who was starting to fall into bad company. One day he arrived with expensive sneakers and a strange smile. Aline looked deep into his eyes. "Where is this from?" Daniel hesitated. He made up a story, but Aline knew. She knew everything about her brothers. Every gesture, every lie, every change of tone. And that night she sat her brother down on the sofa and spoke seriously, like a mother would to a child at the end of her tether. "I can accept a lot of things, except seeing you ruin your life. I bled for you. You won't spit on what I built." Daniel lowered his head. He cried, and he promised he would never do anything wrong again. "Sorry, sis. I just wanted to help you." She hugged him. "Want to help me? Stay in line. Grow up properly. That's all." Bea, on the other hand, grew like a flower in the midst of drought. She was sweet, studious, and dreamed of being a teacher. She called Aline Mommy without even realizing it, and deep down, that's exactly what she meant. But the years passed too quickly, and Aline began to feel her body give way. Back pain, tired eyes, a throbbing head from sleepless nights. But she didn't stop. I couldn't. What sustained her was hope. That one day, when her brothers were well, she could live for herself. Maybe study, travel, have your own home, maybe even get married. But fate is sometimes cruel to those who plant love expecting a harvest, because there are seeds that sprout and others that dry up along the way. And Aline still didn't know. The greatest test of his heart would come when his brothers finally grew up. And she discovered that gratitude is not always reciprocal. Time passed as it does for those who live in a hurry and with few choices. When Aline turned 28, she had already buried more than half of her youth under the care of others, and her brothers, now grown, finally seemed ready to take flight. Daniel, 22, passed the military police exam. He received the news with a cry of elation that echoed through the house and ran straight to hug Aline. "You did it, my brother," she whispered, her eyes welling up. No, us we did it, he replied, still with traces of the boy who saw her as a heroine. Bia, 19, accepted a degree in pedagogy at a public university and even received a scholarship for food and transportation. It was the realization of a long-held dream for her and Aline. On the night of the acceptance, the older sister insisted on cooking the younger sister's favorite dish, with improvised candles and background music on the old radio. "You deserve the world, my flower," Aline said, holding her sister's hands. "And you deserve a rest, sis," Bia replied, emotionally. It seemed like Aline's efforts were finally paying off. She imagined she could now breathe, maybe take that technical course she'd always put off, maybe leave the house, maybe get some care too. But the days went by, and what was supposed to be relief turned into absence. Daniel moved to the countryside where he was assigned to the battalion. Gradually, the calls became rare. The messages were short. The topics were generic. "Is everything okay over there?" Aline asked. "All right, hurry up," he replied, and then he would disappear for days. Bia began interning at a school, made new friends, and started attending college parties. She moved in with classmates claiming she needed independence. "But I'll always visit, okay, sis?" Except the weekends came and went, and the door never slammed. At first, Aline tried to justify it. They are building their lives, that's good. But deep down, it hurt. The house became strangely silent. It was not peace. It was abandonment. Vera, her mother, had already disappeared 2 years ago. No one knows if he died, left, or simply vanished permanently into the world he chose. Aline felt more relief than longing, and now she was alone. For the first time, truly alone. He called his brothers often in the beginning, asking if they needed anything, offering to help, and sending messages with old photos and affectionate messages. But the answers came late, or not at all. What hurt her most was not the silence, it was indifference. On one of Daniel's rare visits, he mentioned that he was going to buy a new car. "You're making good money, huh?" Aline said with a tight smile. "Yes, I am. Now I can enjoy myself a little, right? I worked hard for this." The sentence fell like a knife. Did I work hard? And she, who carried the weight of the house since she was 9? Who had no adolescence, no youth, no choice? She wanted to ask, "Have you forgotten everything?" But he just smiled. A polite, empty smile, like that of someone who accepts an old pain as part of the soul's furniture. Bia also appeared months later, with a new bag, different hair, and a distant air. "I'm thinking about doing an exchange, sis. I got an opportunity in Portugal." "How beautiful, Bia. I'm happy for you. It'll only be for a semester. I promise I'll be back." Didn't come back. Aline didn't ask for help. She never did. But she felt that if they had eyes, they would notice. The fridge that was emptiest. The body aches that were increasing. The sadness that became routine. One day she caught the flu. She missed work. She didn't have money for medicine. He sent a message to Daniel. "Can you help me with an antibiotic?" He visualized. And he didn't answer. That night, Aline understood. The love that gave. It was not the same love that returned. She raised her brothers as her own children. And now was just a distant memory in the schedules of busy adults. What she didn't know is that this forgetting would be just the beginning. Abandonment still had a lot to show, and life, as always, still had one last blow in store for her. Contempt doesn't begin with a scream. It's born in silence. It grows slowly, like mold hidden in the wall. And Aline, in her early 30s, with a body far too tired for her age, began to smell this mold beneath the surface. Messages that used to take a long time to be answered now weren't even read. Video calls that once brought smiles now went to voicemail. Birthdays began to be remembered with a cold "congratulations," copied from some ready-made status. But what hurt Aline the most was the way Daniel and Bea changed their gaze. There was no more tenderness. There was no respect. Just impatience, discomfort, shame. One Sunday, Daniel showed up unexpectedly. He looked different. Shaved hair, police uniform, firm voice, hard gaze. "I just came to drop off some documents. I'm in a hurry." Aline, excited, had already made his favorite dish, just like in childhood. "I made that stroganoff you love." "No way, sis, I'm on a diet." And he left without even going in. It was there that she felt for the first time. He no longer saw himself as part of that house. Bea also came for a quick visit near the end of the year. She sat on the couch but avoided eye contact. She kept fiddling with her phone. "Is everything okay, my daughter?" Aline asked, feeling the distance in the air. "Yes, it is. I'm just tired. I miss you." "Ah, sis. Life changes, right? It changes. But love, when it is true, remains." But their love was changing along with life. Over time, the indirect messages began. Daniel, by message. "Sis, you need to find a way to make it on your own. We won't be able to support you forever." Sustain? She never asked for anything, never charged anything, never demanded a penny. Bea, by audio. "Everyone has their own life, Aline. You have to understand. You can't be emotionally dependent on others all the time." Depending? She just wanted affection, presence, recognition. It was at a Christmas lunch 2 years later that the coldness turned to ice. Aline set the table with great care. Simple dishes, but made with love. He bought a panettone in installments on his card. He put out a new tablecloth, the kind you find in a local store. He lit a scented candle and put on some instrumental music. Daniel arrived with his wife, Bea with her boyfriend. They sat down, ate, and talked to each other as if Aline were a domestic worker. No one asked how she was. No one complimented the food. In the end, Daniel stood up and said, "We need to talk later." "Sure, son," she replied with a nervous smile. They left before 4 p.m. Aline was left alone, collecting dishes, washing the dishes with the towel that still had perfume on it. The following week, the talk came. It was in a cold cafe on a bakery table. Daniel spoke first. "Sis, you know life is hard. I have my son now and his schooling is expensive." Bea added, "And I have a mortgage on the apartment. There's not even any left for me." "It's okay, my loves. I understand. I just wanted to see more of you." Daniel was direct. "We were thinking, maybe it would be better for you to look for a place more suitable for your age, like a nursing home." Aline froze. "Like this? A place with nurses, assistants, so we can feel more at ease, you know? I'm not sick, but she's getting old, and alone. I am alone because you left me. Sis, it's not meant to be bad, but we can't be worrying all the time." That wasn't a conversation, it was a sentence. They didn't want to take care of her anymore. They didn't want to live with her anymore. They no longer wanted memories of the past that bothered them. Aline left the bakery with wet eyes, but without letting a tear fall. She wasn't going to cry in front of them. I had been doing this alone for years. But that day, for the first time, she realized that something had changed inside her. Hope died. And what remained was only silence. The same silence she had known since she was a girl. The silence of those who give everything. And in the end, it is thrown away like an old object. But life, the same one that punishes without mercy, also exacts with precision. And the brothers who forgot who created them, they would still have a lot to pay. No one chooses to grow old alone. But Aline didn't have a choice, not even as a child, and not now either as an adult. A few months after that cold conversation at the bakery, Daniel showed up at her house with a hard expression. I got you a place, sis. In a good place. With food, a warm bed, and a 24-hour nurse. And what do I want? Aline's voice was low but firm. Daniel looked away. You'll be better off there. It's for your own good. There was no debate. There was no, let's think together. The decision had already been made. Bea sent a short message on the same day. You'll be fine. Trust us. We love you. We love you. But not enough to care. Not enough to remember that she was the one who raised them both with her own hands. On moving day, Daniel hired a van. She packed 2 suitcases with Aline's clothes and a few personal items. She didn't even wait for her to say goodbye to the house, the only house where she felt she still had a place. Aline looked around one last time. The marks of the paintings on the wall, the empty closet, the old radio that still worked with a little push. He entered the van like someone entering a funeral. Himself. The asylum was in a remote neighborhood, nestled among hills and alleys. From the outside, it looked clean. Inside, it was damp, stuffy, filled with voices that no one could hear. Beds lined up, narrow corridors, the smell of medicine and loneliness in the air. Aline was welcomed by a friendly caregiver, Donna Leila, who did everything possible to ease the transition. You'll adapt quickly, my dear. We're a family here. But Aline didn't want another family. She wanted hers back. In the early days, she barely spoke. She ate little and slept poorly. She spent her time staring out the window, as if the world outside were a place she'd forgotten how to live. The other elderly people tried to make conversation. Do you have children, my flower? Aline hesitated. I have brothers. Over time, he discovered similar stories inside. A lady who had been a seamstress all her life and was now forgotten by her 3 children. A man who raised his grandchildren while his parents separated, and today only received bills in the mail. The asylum wasn't bad, but it wasn't home either. It was a purgatory for those who were useful and then stopped being so. The months dragged on. Daniel didn't visit anymore. Bea sent a message every 3 months, always generic. Are you okay there, sis? Yes, I am, Aline replied. But she wasn't. It was as if she had been erased from memory, from affection, from history. And then, one afternoon of light rain, while Aline was organizing a box of old papers, she found a photo of the 3 of them together. She, still a teenager, holding Daniel in her arms, and Bea, beside her with a huge bow on her head. Everyone smiling. Aline cried. But this time it wasn't just pain. It was a revolt, of indignation, of a strength that began to sprout where before there was only resignation. She decided to write. He took some paper and began to sketch out everything he had experienced, from childhood, the sacrifices, the choices, the pain. It wasn't daily. It was testimony. And Donna Leila, the caregiver, upon seeing that, was moved. Can I show this to my daughter? She works in social media. Aline hesitated. I don't know if anyone will care. Yes, it will. There are a lot of people who need to hear this. And there, without knowing it, Aline was rekindling a spark that would change everything. Because life, even when it seems over, can still take turns. And those who buried her alive would hear his voice again, and this time, the whole world would listen together. It was a simple post. An old photo. Aline as a little girl, holding her brothers in her arms, accompanied by a text written with a bleeding heart. She had no childhood. She raised her brothers as her own, and in her old age, they abandoned her in a nursing home. Donna Leila's daughter, Julia, posted the story on her TikTok profile. In less than an hour, the video surpassed 10,000 views. In 2 hours, it reached 100,000. In one day, it was in all social networks, with millions of comments, likes, and shares. But Aline had no idea. She only found out when a young nursing home nurse came into the room, panting. Mrs. Aline, you're famous. Famous? She laughed, confused. Your story is moving all of Brazil. Julia arrived with her cell phone in her hand, showing the videos, the comments. This breaks my heart. Where are those brothers now? She is an example of love. And she was forgotten. I want to visit this woman, Aline cried. For the first time, it wasn't from pain. It was from recognition. For days, messages poured in. People from all over the country mobilized, wanting to send gifts, visit, and donate money. A network of solidarity began to form around her, as if the universe were finally righting the brothers' brutal wrong. The nursing home director had to answer calls from journalists, NGOs, influencers, and even television channels interested in telling Aline's story. At first, she was scared. I don't want to show off. I don't want to attack anyone. But Donna Leila said firmly, this is not an attack, my daughter. It is reparation. Eventually, Aline agreed to record a video. Sitting on a simple wooden chair, her face weather-beaten, she stared straight into the camera. I'm not telling this story to make you feel sorry. I tell you so that no one else has to go through what I went through. Because love, when it is true, is not disposable. The video hit 25 million views in 3 days. As a result, companies began offering to help her. A construction company announced they wanted to renovate her old home, making it look brand new. Pharmacy chain offered a lifetime health plan, and an NGO touched by her story promised psychological support and comprehensive assistance for her for the rest of her life. But what Aline liked most was what couldn't be bought: the letters. Hundreds of letters arrived at the nursing home, handwritten with sincere words of love, admiration, and affection. Children, the elderly, teachers, mothers, all touched by a woman who gave everything and still remained steadfast. She read each one with her eyes shining. I thought no one cared. And a nurse replied, the world was just distracted, now it sees you. Meanwhile, outside the walls of the asylum, the matter was breaking out. TV shows debated the topic. Influencers, they talked about gratitude, abandonment of the elderly and family responsibility. Public debates emerged in schools and universities. Aline became a symbol of a generation of women who were mothers without having given birth, of people who gave everything and were forgotten. But even so, they did not lose their dignity. And then, Daniel and Bia saw everything. They were tagged in videos. They received harsh messages. They were identified by neighbors, acquaintances, and co-workers. Public opinion descended upon them like a storm. Are you the police officer who abandoned his sister? Are you the teacher who left the person who raised you in a nursing home? This is a moral crime. It should be a legal crime. The shame came like a slap. But it wasn't enough. Because it wasn't just about public humiliation. It was the truth. And when it comes to light, it transforms everything. And in the midst of all this, Aline remained serene. I don't wish anyone any harm, he said in a live interview. But I believe that what you sow, you reap. And she finally began to harvest. Not money, not fame, but respect, gratitude, and a new kind of love, collective. The one that comes from someone who never knew you, but recognizes your greatness. The fame that Daniel and Bia never asked for came like a whirlwind. But it was not the fame of admiration. It was that of public shame. The morning after the story went viral, Daniel woke up to find his name circulating in PM groups and on social media. His colleagues began to view him differently. The commander called him in for a private conversation. Is what they're saying true? Daniel swallowed hard. It is complicated. It's complicated that you abandoned the woman who raised you and still wear the uniform of honor. Daniel was temporarily removed from the streets. He had to report to the Inspector General, and at the same time, he faced a much crueler trial, the Internet's. Your justice for a line. Daniel Covard, Bia Ingrata. These hashtags dominated the most talked about topics. Old videos of him, photos with his sister when he was still young. Everything surfaced. Comments flooded his social media. You are a traitor. You should lose your job. How do you sleep at night? Bia, in turn, was also identified. College classmates, professors, and even parents began questioning her. A mother, leaving the school where Bia was interning, pointed her finger. You teach children, but you weren't able to take care of the one who raised you? She was fired the following week. Management cited negative public exposure. Bia tried to justify herself. She recorded a video saying that not everything was as it seemed. But nobody believed it. Aline's voice was stronger, cleaner, more true. Daniel and Bia tried to hide. They deactivated social media. They changed their routines. But even the neighbors started whispering. Those two there are the brothers of the woman from the nursing home. A disgrace. She raised them both alone and was abandoned like trash. Bia started having anxiety attacks. She couldn't sleep. She cried in secret. Daniel became more aggressive. They don't know what we've been through, he shouted. But deep down, he knew the guilt was eating away at him. And then came the final moment. Aline was honored live on a national program. He received a symbolic Medal of Honor for dignity and unconditional love. Sitting in the wheelchair, with her hair tied up and a calm smile, she said, "My brothers were all I had, and I gave everything for them. But love doesn't always come back. Sometimes it gets lost along the way. But I don't hold a grudge, because what I did was by choice. And today, even without them, I'm no longer alone." Applause, tears, and a wave of empathy swept the country. Meanwhile, Daniel and Bia watched from afar. Daniel sitting silently, staring at the floor. Bia hugging her own legs, crying like when she was a child. For the first time, the two looked at each other, and they felt ashamed. Not from the exhibition, but of themselves. Because they realized too late that what they had in Aline was more than a sister. She was a mother, a friend, a home, and the home that is abandoned. It doesn't always open the door again. Time doesn't erase the past, but it can heal its wounds when it's watered with justice, affection, and truth. Aline now lived in a new house. Small, comfortable, with a front yard and a back porch. It was a collective gift. Donations from thousands of people moved by her story, along with an NGO that took on her full care. The room was decorated with photos that fans had sent. Letters from children, notes from ladies, portraits of simple people with sincere smiles. That's where she would sit, every afternoon listening to music on the radio, the same one from back then now restored by a volunteer. The old radio, like her, still worked. It still had sound. Aline began to be invited to give lectures, record interviews, and participate in meetings on elderly care and family abandonment. But she always made it clear, I'm not a saint. I was just a sister. And loving shouldn't be a reason for suffering. Donna Leila, now a great friend, accompanied her everywhere. She was almost a real sister. The kind life brings after a blow. Aline found her laughter again. Laugh lightly. Laugh at the funny letters, at the memes they made with her phrases. Laugh at your new friends at the community center. Laugh like someone who has cried enough. She also started writing for real. He transformed the texts he kept into a small book called Love That Doesn't Come Back. The launch was a success, and she donated all the proceeds to institutions that care for abandoned elderly people. But fate, as always, still had one last scene in store. One day the gate of the new house rang. It was Daniel, thin, haggard, with downcast eyes. Alone. Aline opened the door but didn't say anything. He stood still, breathing deeply until he said, I know I don't deserve to enter, I just wanted to say that I remember everything. Of what you did, of what you were, and I will never forgive myself." She was silent. He then handed over a letter. "Bea wrote this. She didn't have the courage to come." Aline took the envelope. Didn't read it right away. He just replied, "I forgive, but I'm not coming back." Daniel nodded, his eyes welling up. "If you need anything, I needed it, and you didn't come." He left, and she sat there on the porch with the envelope in her hands, watching the sky change color. She didn't hate her brothers, but he no longer held out hope for them, because he understood that true love does not beg, does not require. It only offers itself. Once. Now Aline was cared for by strangers who truly loved her. She was heard by thousands who never knew her but recognized her. She was respected, valued, alive. Life took turns, and in the end, whoever was discarded became an example. Those who were silenced became voices, and whoever was forgotten became the eternal memory of an entire country. Because karma, don't shout, does not warn, but enough, always. And the dignity that was taken from him, it returned, stronger, more beautiful, and this time, to stay.